Let's talk about the social self. And when we talk about social self, it's our awareness of possessing a distinct identity that kind of separates us from other individuals. So when we hear the terms like I or me or myself, we tend to have a concept that we think of, we believe in. And that's our social self. And we develop that through the process of socialization. So let's talk about various theories as to how we develop or come about with our social self. The oldest of these theories by far is the clean slate theory of John Locke, philosopher John Locke. This literally comes all the way back from the 1600s. John Locke believed that given a newborn infant, you could take that infant and mold and shape that person into anything that you wanted it to be. Think of a clean slate as like a clean chalkboard, okay? And you can write anything you want to on that chalkboard. Again, this is a very old theory, but basically it's a radical view that totally emphasizes the environment, throws away everything related to genetics. The infant's similar to a ball of clay, which you could, mold and create into any kind of a shape that you wanted to. Now, as I said, this puts all the emphasis on the environment. It's an old theory. Most people would not necessarily go with this today. There's a lot more to the genetics than I think John Locke believed. Second theory is the looking glass self theory of Charles Horton Cooley. Now, when you see the term looking glass, I want you to think of a mirror. Okay, so his idea, he said that we judge ourselves as we imagine that other people judge us. So, in other words, other people act as a mirror to reflect to us our self image. Now, obviously, this has a huge influence on early impressions. It's very possible to either over or underestimate yourself due to incorrect perceptions of how other people view you. As a young child, parents and siblings and teachers, so forth, are going to be extremely important in giving you that sense of self that you develop. Okay, let's take a look at a third theory. And the third theory is the role-taking theory of George Herbert Mead. Now, the first thing to realize is that Mead agreed with Cooley. So, in essence, he's saying the same thing. He said we get our sense of our social self from other people. But he believed that we proceed to take on other people's roles. He talked about role taking. He said role taking allows us to anticipate what others expect of us and to kind of grasp a better view of ourselves. So we first get an impression from others, and then we get to the point where we start taking on and playing roles that kind of fulfill various things that we have to accomplish. Now, he says that the self is developed into in three distinct stages: the preparatory, the play, and the game stage. During the preparatory stage, we're talking about young children, and young children tend to imitate the people around them, especially family members. So, for example, if you look at the picture in the top right-hand corner, the little boy walking along with dad, and both of them got their, hands in the back pockets and so forth. They tend to imitate. I've told this story many times. You'll probably think I'm very, very weird as a result of this, but the very first house that I ever owned was in Speedway, and there was a family that lived across the street from us, and there were times in the summer when I would go out and sit on my front porch simply to watch the guy across the street cut his grass. Why? Because his son, who was about 3 or 4 years old, would always follow him religiously. He would follow him. They had 2 mowers. obviously the gas mower that the gentleman used to cut his grass, but the little boy had a little toy mower. And so they would put gas in the one mower, and then they'd put the, what do you call it, the bubbles in the other mower. And then Dad would take off, and about 15 feet behind him, the little boy, and I mean, he would trace his dad's steps just perfectly. And there would be bubbles flying all over the yard and all over the neighborhood. It was quite humorous to watch, but that would be an example of what Mead refers to as the preparatory stage. Okay, children imitating the behavior of others around them. Now, the play stage begins later. The children get a little bit older, and they start pretending to be other people. So this would be when they start learning to take on other roles. They take on the role of teacher or doctor or parent or superhero. When they play Batman and Robin, and they get to be one or the other of the roles, so they start playing that. Now, as they get a little bit older, usually Mead says around ages 8, 9, maybe 10 years old, children, they enter what he calls the game stage. And this is where they begin to consider several different tasks and different relationships simultaneously. So they don't just play their role, but they also can kind of mentally envision what the other roles are doing and how all of that goes together socially. So, he refers to that as the game stage. Now, there are two groups of people who are very important in terms of how we develop our social self. He refers to significant others and generalized others. Significant others are like parents, close friends, close family members, maybe a coach who's very close to you, or a teacher, somebody who's extremely important. Okay, that's a significant other. Generalized others refers to the other people around us. Could be, friends that we aren't as close with, or just, exterior members of our family, people of that nature who they influence us, but not nearly to the degree that the significant others do. And Mead talked about two parts of the social self. He says we have what he called an I self. Your I self is totally unique. It's personal, it's subjective, it's constant, it's always with us. It's not dependent upon who we are, who we're around, or where we're at, or what we're doing. The I self is with us always. It's the real us, so to speak. Okay? The me self is essentially dependent upon the time and the situation. Okay? And who you're around and what the situation is. So, for example, in a classroom, you're playing the role of a student. Now, is that your I self or your me self? That would be your me self. Okay, your me self is playing the role of a student, and you're going to play it in a specific way because there are certain things that you're expected to do around that group of people. Now, your I self can still have an influence on how you play that role. Your I self is down deep. So some students play the role one way, some students play the role a different way. So you can look around, no two students are going to be the same, and that's because of our I self. Okay? Now, when you go home from class and nobody's home except maybe your parents or brother, sister, what have you, and you walk in, you kick off your shoes and you sit down. Now you start acting as your I self. The real you comes out. Now, Mead says that you tend to be your I self around significant others. You tend to be your me self around generalized others. That's how all that works. Okay? All right, we have talked about 3 different theories. Let's talk about one different theory now. If we look back, okay, we talk about John Locke, we talk about Cooley, okay? And we talk about Mead. And in all three of those, we are essentially being given our social self by other people. That's not what this theory is about. Okay, the impression management theory of Irving Goffman. In this, the individual basically acts as an actor on stage. Goffman believed that we are in control. We both consciously and unconsciously present ourselves as we want other people to view us. Okay? We control the impression that other people have on us. Okay? And again, this is conscious. We do it knowing about it, and then part of it is unconscious. All right? Now, examples, well, there are tons. Okay? Whether it be from, you know, singing stars to, presidents, politicians. Politicians are very much trying to create a certain impression that the majority of the people will identify with. When you're at work, all of a sudden you hear the boss coming. You look busy as the supervisor walks by. Maybe you were kind of goofing off, but now all of a sudden you change the way you act because of who comes around. If you're attracted to somebody and all of a sudden they come close by, you may act differently because of that person. And basically that's what he refers to as impression management. Sometimes this is referred to as the dramaturgical approach. But basically you are creating that image. Okay? All right. Last thing to look at here, and that is the idea of a variety of things that impact our socialization. And all of these things, these are just certain agents, certain things, but I mean there's a number of elements that are going to influence a person's socialization, whether it be the family, whether it be peer groups, daycare, your race, what school you go to, your gender, religion, mass media, and so forth. All of those things are going to be very, very important. And these are things that we will talk about later in the semester and how they can influence not only an individual, but many of us on a societal level as well.